Time now is 18 minutes to 8. The peak of the Omicron wave seems to have passed in London hospitals, but the North West fears that they are next. Indeed, they know that they are next. Cases of COVID in hospitals here in Greater Manchester have doubled in the last fortnight, and they have now asked for military support, and hospitals have closed for non-urgent surgical care. Yesterday after the programme, I went to Bolton Hospital to see the scale of the challenge they're now facing. To walk into the Royal Bolton Hospital is to enter a world when no one would dream of talking, as so many do in Westminster, of the pandemic being over, of a crisis being averted, of breathing a sigh of relief. This is a hospital, this is a region still fighting a COVID wave, still bracing itself for another surge of patients.
I'm Lianne Robinson. I'm the Director of Nursing at Royal Bolton Hospital. 3/4 of my family's had COVID over the last 2 weeks since Christmas. So, it's out there, it's in the community, and it's spreading fast within the community. And we are seeing that translation through now into the hospital.
Turn left, second on your right.
In the first wave of COVID, we were able to step down all of our services. We stopped providing outpatients, we stopped delivering elective surgery. But we have to continue with those services. We still have to be able to provide patients with their treatment for cancer, with their elective surgery when it's clinically urgent, provide outpatient appointments. So we're dealing with COVID and we're dealing with our normal day-to-day business at the same time. And that is really tough and it's exhausting, and the staff are exhausted in dealing with it.
This is the red zone at the Royal Bolton Hospital, the place the sickest of the sickest come. ICU, intensive care. They talk here of it having been like a war. In the last 2 years, just over 400 patients have come through this unit. 222 died. Dr. Dan Nethercott is one of the consultants on intensive care.
This time about 18 months ago in this particular area was very, very strange and very, very bad. I'm always a bit hesitant to be flippant about the idea of being in a war. I've never been in a war, but it felt a bit like that. There was a lot of people dying, there was a lot of people frightened.
If that was war, is this normality or close to something normal in an intensive care unit?
Yeah, now it feels like we've got used to the problem. So as a clinical disease, we've got a pretty good handle on what we're dealing with. I wouldn't say at the current time that intensive care in my hospital is overwhelmed. We're under a bit of stress. We're often under stress as trying to do the most good with the resource that we have, but it's nothing like it was. The big thing, of course, is vaccination status. And it is true that if you are unvaccinated, you are more likely to die if you catch the disease, and you are more likely to become severely ill. And that's really difficult.
Do you have people who say, if they're able to speak when they come up here, wish I'd had the jab, doc?
There's a very fascinating thing, is when people have made a choice like that, they sometimes do the opposite. And it's a strange part of human psychology that people will sometimes double down on an error. And from an emotional perspective, people just simply don't think they're going to get ill. And if you're not vaccinated now, I predict it's probably because you've decided to not be vaccinated. And I don't think that people like me talking to people on the radio has any influence over those people having made that choice.
So by the sound of it, you wish it did?
Yeah. I mean, I would hesitate to call anybody stupid, because making one stupid choice doesn't mean that you're a stupid person. But in my view, from my perspective, standing where I have, having seen those people die, that is a stupid choice.
What felt like a war in intensive care may well be over, but the frustration, the anger almost with those who never needed to be victims of that war is never far from the surface.
Hey sweetheart, I'm just going to give you a bit of mouth to freshen up, alright darling?
There is another group of patients who don't need to be in this hospital. Those who simply cannot be sent home or into the community, as there isn't the care, there aren't the staff needed to release them safely.
Excuse me, sweetheart. Just a bit of water.
Rosemary Jevens is a physiotherapist who manages the process of discharging patients.
Well, I think we've got lots of challenges at the moment with obviously staffing shortages and staff sickness across all of our trust services, and obviously with patients going to care homes. So we've had a lot of closures across the region due to staff sickness, but also COVID outbreaks, and that is very challenging in terms of patients being stranded essentially in hospital, where we're struggling to get them out of hospital to a place that is appropriate to their needs.
It isn't all that very long ago that the talk was of the NHS being overwhelmed. Even here, that sort of language feels over the top. But this hospital is stretched, very stretched. As too many new patients come in, too many well people can't be sent home, and too few staff are available to care for them.
Yeah, how are you? So have you been for a test?
Karen Meadowcroft, Chief Nurse, Bolton Hospital. Staff absences today is roughly about 10%. Half of that is made up of COVID absences, and the other half is normal, what we call normal sickness within staff within the service.
And what about the military? We know in Greater Manchester there's been a request for help. Are we going to see doctors from the armed forces, nurses?
That's likely to come online next week. We don't know the profile of the platoon that we will get, how many of those will be clinical staff. I accept that the military resource is very precious, and we will be grateful for any support that we get.
Karen, at a personal level, you look and you sound pretty calm. Does it feel like this is challenging, but you've got this?
Absolutely. I think obviously when we first had COVID, we were all in a state of heightened escalation and concern, and we've been doing this for 2 years now. We've got structures in place, we are planning, we are tracking, we are working really hard.
Day 6, do see whether you're negative. Day 7, see whether you're negative.
Even though everyone I spoke to here hopes that the worst is behind them, that the war, if you like, is now an increasingly distant memory rather than an everyday reality. If you dared to suggest that it was all over, you might find yourself getting an ear lashing, or the sort of bloody nose that would require attention in A&E. This hospital, 17 others in Greater Manchester, are not back to normal. COVID means the doors of those hospitals have to remain closed to those needing non-urgent surgery, and they could remain closed for some time yet. The picture there at the Royal Bolton Hospital, just down the road, from where I'm broadcasting this morning in Salford. It is now 10 to 8. It's time for